So we're going to move on to our presenter. So we're going to bring Carin on to our panel view. And let me just say a couple of things about Coach Marrs here before she gets started. She's in her 8th year as the head coach of the university team in San Francisco. She's qualified her teams to the state meet each year, and she's finished on the podium 3 times, including their first ever boys state title in 2017. Prior to being the coach at University High School in San Francisco, she was the head coach at nationally ranked Western Albemarle. I'm going to say Albemarle in Virginia. So just she's had an outstanding career, and she's still a young coach looking to continue the winning tradition at University High School. So we're very, very lucky to have her here speaking to us today. Take it away, Carin.
Awesome. All right, let's go. Let's go here. All right, can we see? Here we go. All right, technology is not my strong suit, but I think I can do it. Hi, everybody. As Chuck mentioned, I both coached and actually attended Western Albemarle. It's a small school in Central Virginia. And before I get into our presentation topic today, I will go back and talk a little bit about my own high school experience and how I started coaching, but don't worry, it won't last too long. So you can see that our uniforms looked pretty rough, so I'm not that young. Those uniforms are pretty old, and that's me over there in lane 1, just getting ready to start the mile. I had a great experience running in high school. My team was, if you were listening to Marie's presentation last night, our team was ranked right behind Marie's team for one of those years. We were 8th in the country, and while I was not nearly as fast as Marie was in high school and in college, I had an awesome experience as a high school athlete. We had a really tight pack of girls that ran together, and although none of us were superstars by any stretch, together the 7 of us did some pretty awesome things and started some pretty great traditions at the school in Central Virginia. And more than just the racing and the fast times, we were highly competitive, all of us were, but we had so much fun. And that picture on the right there is one of our summers at camp. My coach would take us up to a cabin in West Virginia, and we would do a lot of trail running. It's not, in some ways, it's not unlike Humboldt. And the boys team would have a cabin and the girls team would have a cabin, and it was always a lot of fun. I'm not sure what we did that night, but it's definitely a photo of a night run, and we have wet hair, so I think we were getting in the lake. And I don't really know what those squeezy bottles were all about. Maybe it's better that I don't remember what we were doing. But at the end of the day, I had a great high school experience, was on a great competitive team, and did have a pretty successful individual high school 4 years as well. My college career was unremarkable. I did attend a Division I college, but don't really think we have time to talk about all of that. I made some mistakes that Marie didn't make, and never really had a college career that was what I was hoping for. The year after I graduated from college, I came back and started coaching at my alma mater at Western Albemarle. And the winning tradition that started when I was a freshman at Western had continued throughout my 4 years in college. And I was lucky enough to jump in for 1 year as an assistant coach, and then took over as head coach when I was 23 years old, and was lucky enough to work with some really awesome individuals who, not unlike myself as a high schooler, were really into having fun together and working really hard together as well. Western is, since probably none of y'all are familiar with this school, it's a public school, very much mixed income. We had some wealthy folks there at the school, but also a lot of farm kids, and about 800 students. During the time I was coaching there, we won 7 state titles, 3 in cross country, 3 in indoor, and 1 in outdoor. It was really awesome to work with one All-American individual in the 800 meters. She was 4th at nationals, and then we also a DMR and a 4x8 were also finished 5th and 6th at nationals when I was coaching there. So that was my foray into coaching. I took a hiatus for some professional work and moved to California. And then a few years later, I started coaching at University High School in San Francisco. It's a pretty different experience for me. UHS, if you're not familiar, and probably many of you aren't, we are in San Francisco, and it's a private school of about 400 students. One thing that I'm most proud of is that on our team, we have about 70 of those 400 students on our cross-country team each year. And in track and field, we have about 80 of the 400 students in our program. So while the school's not a big school by some standards, we do have a lot of participation, and our teams aren't super tiny. As Chuck mentioned, the girls have been runners-up at the state meet both in 2017 and 2019. All those podium finishes that you voted on last night, most of them happened before my time, but not before one of my assistant coaches' time. Shout out to Kevin, I think he's listening here. And the boys did win the first state title for our school in 2017. They were NCS champs in 2017 and 2019. And if De La Salle hadn't also won the NCS meet last year, we would be tied with them. But, you know, John's team just keeps moving ahead if they keep winning. One of the statistics that I'm proudest of, I haven't, coached any All-Americans at UHS or any of that, but I am really proud that we, on average each year, 11 of our graduating track and cross country kids go on to compete in college. And these aren't colleges necessarily, big D1 powerhouse conference schools, but what it says to me is that in some way these athletes have loved the sport so much that they just don't want to give it up as they go off to college, and they want to find a way to continue to enjoy it and compete. We haven't burned them out on competition yet, and they still think that their best years are ahead, and that to me is really really gratifying. All right, so today we're talking about training in the time of COVID-19. Here you see an image of the small pod I've been working with all summer. We made a decision to work with the city of San Francisco and create a summer camp situation so that my athletes could meet in small groups throughout the summer. I've got an assistant coach and a couple of alumni that are running other groups. I don't really see them because I'm not allowed to. But just want to say, if your team or your coach has decided for a multitude of reasons, whether it's county regulations or personal preference or health concerns or school prohibitions, there are a lot of other ways to train besides doing it with a small group the way that my team is doing it. So there's no judgment if you and your coach have chosen to do something different, especially over the summer. But this is what we're doing. And, we're doing something wrong in this picture, which is we are not running at the present moment. We were just getting ready to take our sweatshirts off because it's freezing in San Francisco in July, and we should have had our gaiters up, our neck gaiters up, but there we are, getting ready to go out for a run a couple days ago. All right. So COVID has changed everything. And how do we train during this time? Marie encouraged us, and I think Chuck mentioned this in his presentation a couple of days ago as well, is that we really need to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Many, many years ago, when I first started out as a coach, I sort of came up with three philosophical principles that I wanted to guide my work as a coach and the teams that I worked with. And these principles haven't changed in the years that I've been coaching. And when we hit a situation where I don't know what to do, maybe it's who do we put on a relay, or who do we take on this overnight trip, or how do we handle this team dynamic situation? Right now, the big question mark for me was, how do we handle training during COVID? How do we handle our team during COVID? I try to make every decision based on three principles. And the first is growth. That means athletic growth. You're becoming a better runner and a better athlete. What are we going to do to help you do that? This also means personal growth. So we try to make our decisions on what is going to help these individuals become the best versions of themselves through running, but not just in running. while COVID has changed a lot, it certainly doesn't change our ability to foster growth in people. And in fact, I think we're growing more than we ever have, and we don't even know it right now. Speaking of growth, this featured individual there in the middle, this was her state meet last year, and I just looked at her profile from XC Stats the other day. This race was 4 minutes and 54 seconds faster than what she ran at the Clovis Invitational her freshman year. So Athena is a great example of athletic growth, but she's also a great example of personal growth. And her story is not mine to tell right now, but it's a good one. Okay. Individualization. It's really easy as coaches to box athletes into sort of training groups or what we think you can do based on various time trials. And in the time of COVID, as it always is on our team, we've tried really hard to individualize training. And in fact, it can become, this is a spot where we really can take advantage of a lack of massive, huge group practices. We can spend more time talking to individuals. You as an athlete can spend more time talking to your coach about your individual situation, and we can really tailor your training to what works for you and what work, rather than just what might work for a training group that you're usually a part of. I've always said, if you want to teach Johnny, we'll use that name, to run fast, you need to know how to run fast, and you need to know Johnny. And the knowing each individual as a human being outside of their just running or their stats is really important to individualize now more than ever. Community is something that COVID hasn't taken away, but oh my gosh, it has made it so much harder. When we're so used to just, laughing, joking, running hard together at practice, and we've had to reimagine how that can happen. I know a lot of coaches have been using Zoom as a connector for their teams. And when I was deciding, how to structure our summer workouts and going through the arduous process of getting certified for a San Francisco summer camp license, this was really at the heart of my decision making around that, because everybody can train on your own, but my athletes were so desperate for a way to train in small groups at least, that was sort of the tipping point for me in deciding how to do it and making sure that we're doing it safely. Okay, so I want to acknowledge that COVID and all of the disastrous things that have been going on in the past couple of months, this racial justice being brought to the forefront again, or lack of racial justice, I should say, COVID and many other sort of worldwide disasters that are happening right now. It's doing a number on our collective mental health. And if you are feeling like your motivation is lacking, your emotions are all over the place, and you just don't really feel like yourself a lot of the time, you are not alone. I used this text message excerpt with permission from an athlete who sent it to me on May 8th, and I've taken out some of the more personal details. But after a couple of months of isolation and uncertainty, and when we finally realized that track wasn't going to happen this year, or a track season with competitions wasn't going to happen this year, this person who I assumed was just kind of going with the flow and doing all the workouts I was sending to kids via email, admitted to me that she actually couldn't get out the door and run at all. She was just so flattened by the situation going on that was out of her control. So I'm really proud of her for sending me this text message, and I encourage any of you who are really struggling with your mental health right now, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Many of us are, and to reach out to somebody you trust. And I'm really grateful she reached out to me. And as a sidebar, she's been a part of one of our training groups really consistently this summer, and her mental health is in a way better place than it was at the point of this text message, but it's really real, you guys. On the flip side, COVID has brought some really new opportunities and has actually expanded what some people are able to do with their training. And here's one of my athletes on the side. She actually enjoyed, for the most part, until it got boring, training on her own schedule. So like Ozzy mentioned with John, Marissa would go out at twilight, which is her favorite time of day to run every day. She would run by the beach. She would take cool selfies like that. And she was really enjoying the flexibility that not having a set practice schedule like we've normally had was giving her. Side note, she is part of one of our training groups now and says she actually is having more fun with the group, but there can be some highlights for sure. All right, getting down to principle number 1. Consistency is key. This is there's a title, this is the title of a book that has just been published. Some of you may have it. I don't have my copy yet, but from the excerpts I've read, it's pretty much gold. It's addressed to high school runners, just like you guys. And the thing I want to emphasize to you right now is that no matter where you've been for the last couple of months, if you have been taking a monster break since mid-March when everything shut down, or if you've been training consistently as an athlete, according to following every detail of your training plan, that doesn't matter nearly as much going into the fall and winter as what you do from this point on. So you need to start at a place that's reasonable for you, and you need to make a commitment to doing it. Remembering your why, like we talked about earlier. But perfectly completing every workout is not going to be possible. When your coach gives you a weekly workout plan or maybe a monthly plan, everybody's different. These are guidelines. They are not prescriptions. We say this a lot on my team. If you run 6.8 miles and you were supposed to run 7 miles that day, or if the schedule says do 10 by 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy, and you only did 8, that to me is not what's important right now. That you're getting the bulk of the work done is absolutely the goal, and perfection really can drive us into a lot of different places, but overtraining is the place I'm thinking of right now. So speaking of somebody who didn't complete things perfectly, here is JT as a freshman. JT could not complete a 20-minute run. I don't even think he could complete a 15-minute run without stopping and all the things that many beginners do. We put him in a 400 his freshman year, pictured here, because his endurance was lacking, to say the least. But JT just showed up. He was riddled with injuries, and I'm not talking overtraining injuries. JT was the guy who would fall on his skateboard or trip down the stairs or, get tackled in an ultimate Frisbee game and come up with a new injury every couple of months. You've probably had teammates like this. But JT would show up. He would consistently show up every day at practice. Some days all he could do was kind of a run-walk combo. Sometimes he would shorten the workout because he couldn't quite handle it due to whatever, he was dealing with that day. And some days he couldn't run at all. He would come and just do a strength circuit for an hour, push-ups and core work, and while everyone else was doing their run. But he kept showing up. And 3 years later, JT was our third guy on our state championship team. And perhaps most remarkably, he passed 76 guys in the final 2 miles at Woodward and really secured the win for us that day. His consistency, while it wasn't necessarily paying off in ways that he could see day to day, really did pay off by his senior year. JT was also a hurdler for us in the spring, even though the 300s were way too short for him. It was fun, so we did it. Why not? And then by his senior year, he got to compete in a 2K steeplechase, which was a really great experience for him, and probably the race that he's most well suited for as a collegiate athlete. More on JT in just a minute. All right, showing up. How can we be consistent? So showing up is simple but not easy. We need to put measures in place to help us stay consistent, because it's easy to talk about it, but how do we really do this? So this is another promise. This is my last text message excerpt, and it seems a bit random, but I couldn't find many screenshots that didn't include quite a bit of profanity. So that I tried to find something that seemed G-rated here. The one thing that my athletes did as soon as we shut down our practices and I couldn't meet with them was they created their own sort of extended family bubble. And I definitely don't recommend this if it's not okay with your parents, but they all checked in with their parents, and their parents said, you can meet for 2 hours with this small group of people who's also not expanding their quarantine bubble much beyond this. And what they did was they had this chat every day. You can see it was the cute name they threw on there. And they would they would pick a meeting place and they would work out together every single day using the workouts that I sent them in a spreadsheet. This was a really grounding practice for them, literal practice, as so much was changing in our world. And I was really proud of them for sort of taking this on by themselves. They knew they needed accountability to stay, to continue working out, and they created it for themselves. This is probably not most folks' experiences. Most of you probably aren't allowed to meet with other groups. So I encourage you to find other ways to do that. Strava is a great way to post your workouts so that your coach can see them and see the details of them. I'm not a fan of Strava for some reasons, but for this, at this point, it can be really helpful. If you are, if that doesn't work for you, you can just, text or call a friend to hold you accountable for getting out the door every day. And you certainly, I think most coaches would welcome a personal text or a personal call if you want that kind of accountability as well. If you're able to meet in small groups, I can't stress enough how important this is. It makes life feel a little bit more normal because it's what we're used to, and it really is a privilege to be able to do that. There are many other sports that really can't meet together in small groups like we can, and do it safely during this time. If you're coming from team sports, I used to hear the phrase, give 100%. I mean, I'm a former basketball player, and we would talk about giving 110% every day in practice. Training for a 5K, particularly during all the uncertainty right now, this is not a good slogan. This is not your mantra. You don't want to be giving 110% in practice every day. You've heard from both John Pelster and Ozzy about sort of the burnout that happens at the end of cross-country season, and how it is related to some physical things probably, but the emotional energy that you are putting into your workouts right now should be about 90%, even on your hardest days. And then on the recovery days and, the days where your pace isn't too fast, much less than 90% should be your effort level. And this is because we only have, like John so aptly put it, we only have so many matches in our match book, and we don't want to burn them in a fall workout when we're not even in the middle of a season. The exception would be a time trial. So some coaches I know are scheduling periodic time trials or pseudo meets throughout the fall, and if you're sort of putting those on your calendar as what you're shooting for, absolutely give a race effort on those times. That's why we've scheduled them for you. All right, so your body is smarter than your coach. This one, that title's kind of inflammatory. I think I'm pretty smart. This really I really want you to know that communicating with your coach is so important right now. They're not annoyed at you. I can promise you. We don't have a lot going on. If you're sending us a text message about how your workout went, it probably makes our day. Please communicate, because that's how we can craft better training for you as an individual. Your Garmin also doesn't know how you feel. And I mention this because I know that Garmin's are a big part of a lot of your training. But here's why I think they're not the best tool in some contexts right now. A lot of times you may have heard from your coach or looked up on a pace calculator, given your personal bests in these events, your easy recovery run pace should be 8 minutes, let's say. What can happen is you are looking at your watch, you're looking at your Garmin, and you're just checking. Am I running 8-minute pace? Am I running 8-minute pace? Oh, I'm feeling pretty good about myself because I'm actually running 7:50 pace today on my recovery run. But what that does is it takes you out of the purpose of your recovery run. And we need those recovery runs right now so much. We need to be recovering really, really well during this time. The Garmin doesn't take into account all of the life stresses that you have also put on yourself besides just your running. And if you haven't gotten enough sleep, for example, it's a huge life stress. You're not going to be able to run at the right effort level. Your pace will not match your paces at the same effort level if you're not getting enough sleep, or substitute any other stressor, family dynamic issues, school stuff, relationships. It's really important to listen to your body on the long runs and on the recovery runs, and not worry so much about what pace you're doing these runs at. Similarly, so my next point says focus on perceived rate of exertion. Many of you may have heard this term, perceived rate of exertion, and that is really the guiding principle in your workouts. You have accomplished the goal of the workout if you are putting forth the correct amount of effort, no matter what the splits on your watch might say. If you're like me, and I think, some people here probably are, if my coach in high school gave me, do 3 or 4 by a mile, run them in 6 minutes, I would feel awesome if I did, ran those miles in 5:55. It was, I accomplished the purpose of the workout. I was even 5 seconds under, all this stuff. But the point is not running 5:55 or 6 minutes at all. On the other side, if I ran 6:03 for those mile splits, I would have a pretty terrible day. I would feel pretty bad about myself all day. I would start spiraling down the abyss of how slow I'd gotten, and it would really make me feel pretty bad until I could redeem myself in the next workout. Right now, more than ever, and this principle doesn't just apply to COVID times, but it's right now more than ever, you didn't lose the workout if you ran 6:03s. You put forth the effort to run what you think is a 6-minute effort, and whatever the time shows up on your watch, that's what wins the workout for the day. We have to understand what the purpose of the workout is. And your body doesn't really know the difference between a 6-minute mile and a 6:03 mile. Your body knows what kind of effort you put in, and that's what creates the adaptations. That's what gets you, how you benefit from workouts, where you get those gains is from the effort that you're putting in, because your body just can't tell the difference between those, minute splits. All right, so most distance runners have type A tendencies, will push more than a NARP. Y'all have heard this term, right? I don't know. I use it a lot because I have a lot of friends who are NARPs, and NARP means non-athletic regular person. So here's an example. A non-athletic regular person might say, oh, I really want to, start working out. They schedule themselves a 3-mile run to, kick off their workout regimen. 1 mile into the 3-mile run, the NARP says, gosh, this is pretty hard. I think I'll probably just walk the last 2 miles and call it good. Most distance runners, if you've been in the sport for any amount of time, type A might sound derogatory, and I don't mean it that way at all, but we're not going to walk in the last 2 miles if we can try to finish that 3-mile run. And this is actually a great principle to have, a great personality trait to have when you're racing, because, you're in pain, you're not feeling good. You finish the race and you finish it as strong as you possibly can. You don't just jog it in. If you're not probably a great competitor if you cave to discomfort most of the time. But this isn't always great for staying injury-free in training. And right now, y'all, we need to be injury-free is our #1 goal for this COVID season, because if you can stay injury-free, you can build so much fitness right now before our races return, whenever that is. But if you do get injured, it's pretty hard to, it's gonna take extra time to build back up from taking the time off for an injury. So that's a big piece that we want to be thinking about right now. And I heard a statistic recently that actually, if you're a self-professed perfectionist or type A personality trait, you have a 17% greater chance of getting injured than someone who doesn't self-describe in that way. So this is, it's really important to not just push through injury-related pain and listen to your body as much as you can. This does not, as a caveat, apply to a hard workout. If you're feeling discomfort in a hard workout, that's not, an acute shin pain or something like that, finish the workout. Like, that's the point. You're supposed to get used to feeling uncomfortable. And then I threw this in. Some coaches feel differently about this, but in my opinion, making up workouts is rarely a good idea. If you have to miss a day or two because you're sick or because you're a little bit banged up and hurt, or really for any reason, trying to squeeze in that extra workout during a already compressed week because you took the earlier days off is really, not the best idea. I have athletes who want to do this all the time. I missed my Tuesday workout because I was sick. Can I do it on Thursday? No, we have a workout on Friday. Like, you're going to just do the recovery run today on Thursday and then hop back into the workout on Friday. You're not going to try to do 2 workouts back to back. And this goes for making up weekly mileage, if that's something that you're tracking as well. If you're working towards, doing 60 miles a week and you have to miss 2 days, well, now you've got to fit those 60 miles in 5 days. Not a great idea. Just prorate your mileage for the week. All right, experiments are okay. Oh man, I love experimentation. I think it's so fun, but rarely as coaches can we do a lot of this during a normal cross-country season, because we have these races on our calendar and we can't really afford the 2-week trial period of figuring out if a new strategy is going to work without it impacting some sort of race. So right now, because we might have some time trials on our calendar, but really no set in stone races, we can do a lot of experimenting on ourselves to see what actually helps us as individuals. And there's a lot of extra time right now, and in that way, this time it's very exciting. You can actually try some new things, but please, again, talk to your coach before you try any of this stuff. And please know that this is the time to do experimentation if you're going to do it, with coach approval for sure. But please don't do experiments on yourself. I'm going to tell you a quick story because my athlete is just too funny. So he, actually that's him right there, and that's Frank in the red and white with the San Francisco Giants beanie. Frank had a great league championship meet and NCS meet last year when we won both of those. And Frank decided that his success was chalked up to his newfound love of a beet juice elixir he'd been doing some research on. Well, the morning of the state meet in Fresno, he hikes to the local Target and purchases a container of what, I don't know if he intentionally did it or not, but he purchased some beet juice. But this was not your average beet juice. It was Red Bull laced beet juice, or maybe beet juice laced Red Bull. I really don't know. But needless to say, Frank was shaking on the starting line, blazed through his first mile, and then the wheels really fell off for the last 2 miles for him. It was an experiment that he could have done at a practice, but he learned his lesson that we don't experiment when you're taking, you're competing at the biggest race of your high school career. But what do we want to incorporate more? Are there things that you've always wanted to do a little bit more of that you've never been able to because of time? All we have is time right now, y'all. We've got less time that you're in school, less time that you're commuting places, and less urgency to race. So we can afford to make actually a couple of adjustments and just kind of see how things go. Some things that you may want to consider are, if you're somebody who really wants to work on your aerobic strength, thinking about a little bit higher mileage. This can come in the form of starting to incorporate doubles into your day. Some people find that really helpful. And sometimes maybe some folks may want to extend their long run, or just experiment with extending a long run and see how that goes for you. And I say this again, please check in with your coach about all these things. Some of you may want to extend some of the harder portions of your workout, though I recommend, if you're bumping up your mileage in any way, that you not also bump up the intensity of your workouts at the same time, because that can be a pretty challenging thing on your body. If you're looking to generate like more speed and power, there's all kinds of speed development work that you can incorporate into your week. And I'm sure your coach has some information on this. One thing that we do quite often is 8 to 10 second hill sprints. This helps with strength. It's kind of like a really safe way to do speed work, because you just can't get going that fast, but your body's still getting the benefits of speed work when you're sprinting up a hill. And it also really helps with running mechanics. If you're somebody who knows that their form could use a little bit of work, these hill sprints can help with that. All right. Another suggestion you might want to incorporate into your training is learning how to pay. I find this one really fun, like learning how to master pacing without your watch. So maybe that's just like turning your screen off, or not looking at your watch for a certain amount of time, and figuring out how to really run a pace that you want to run without glancing down at your watch all the time. This can really help if you're somebody who is maybe like a 520, your 5K is, 520 pace or something, and you tend to always go out in 505, but then sort of basically walk it in your last mile because, oh man, it was so easy during that first mile. I felt great. And then the last mile, your fitness just wasn't in a place to sustain that faster pace. Learning how to really tune into what a pace is without constantly glancing at your watch can really help you in an endurance event where pacing is really important, like a 5K. Crushing the rehab and prehab. Y'all, if you don't spend time doing anything else right now, again, coming back to our theme of how we can stay injury-free during this time, many of you have had some kind of injury in the past, and you were probably given rehab exercises by a physical therapist, or maybe a doctor, or even a school trainer. But these rehab, I think that most people do the rehab exercises during the time when they're acutely recovering from their injury. They're really motivated to get back to sport, and they don't want to do anything to mess that up. But then once you're back to running, it's really easy to sort of put these things aside and forget about how devastated you felt when you couldn't run that race because of your hip injury. Well, right now is the time. Go back to those old files, pull up that old email that your PT gave you, or your doctor, and really get back into some of these exercises right now, because prehab means you're doing things to prevent having to go through an injury in the future. And we've got a lot of time right now. I know this stuff is super boring. I'm with you on that. But you can probably like scroll Instagram while you're doing most of these exercises. Figure something out. Strength work is so important. If you don't already do this as a part of your program, I cannot emphasize it enough. Again, going back to injury prevention, I think strength work has been the ticket for our kids on our team, just really minimizing injuries in the past couple of years. And, most gyms are closed right now. Weight rooms probably at your school are closed. You can set up a circuit at your house with some dumbbells and you can throw some books in a backpack. We do this. My assistant coach I know is listening. He and I do this workout a lot. And figure out ways to do strength work, do sort of a version of lifting, even if you don't have a weight room. Our high school actually doesn't have a weight room, so all of our strength work that we do is in the form of circuit training. If you don't know what this is, there's plenty of great apps, including Hoka app there, and you should check them out. It's actually, there's a Nike training app and a Hoka, and 100%, in my opinion, my opinion of one, the Hoka app is way better. All right. So embracing the process. Oh man, I feel like very Northern California saying this right now, but because the phrase is thrown around so often, it becomes kind of meaningless. But right now, more than anything, we must figure out why we're doing this. If we're just doing this to train to win a state championship, if we're just running to beat a certain individual at a certain race, if we're just training to run that mile PR on the perfect day at Stanford, that is not going to be enough right now. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, and we don't know when these competitions as we once knew them are going to come back. Not to say that you shouldn't have goals. I think it's great to have goals, but the goals cannot come at the expense of enjoying what we're doing. You can see a little, I think that's 17-year-old Carin right there. One of my goals was to beat this girl, and I had a photograph in my little scrapbook saying, you may pass me now, but I'll come back next week. Sure did beat her, because I wrote down my goal. No, it's something that we do emphasize a lot, is goal setting. But right now, I think we should set aside some of that and just get down to basic hard work. The girl on the right here, this is Tasman. She was the All-American 800-meter runner that I had in high school, got to work with. She went on to have an even more successful college career, including a 15:37 5K and winning the Oregon Twilight meet. Her favorite story about that meet was not the big win, but that she got to meet Barack Obama, who was there in the audience. It was a really special day for her. But this kind of stuff really just didn't matter to Taz, and still doesn't, as much as the basic love of running. The girl just loved to get out early in the morning, go on a run on a long gravel road, have a great conversation with her teammates, no matter if they were, 5 minutes slower than her in the 5K or, right around her pace. She loved the process, and I have no doubt that that's why she continued to be successful as a collegiate athlete, and she's now running for Atlanta Track Club Elite. And just she's a great example of this. All right, last little piece here: improvement is rarely linear. Now, this is something that I would normally present when talking about a racing season, but I think it's really important to discuss it right now too, as we're in the middle of this determined length of training. So there are going to be days when you're feeling great and days when you're feeling terrible. If you're doing some time trials this fall, it's likely that you're going to have one or two that just don't go the way that you wanted them to go. Our progress graphs look more like lightning bolts than this perfect 45-degree angle trajectory with an XY axis, X being the time and the Y being the pace over there. I do like looking at graphs because I just nerd out on measurable things like this, but you can see this person actually isn't the best example of this, but my point is that you're not going to have this perfect trajectory because that's not how our bodies work. That's not how they adapt to hard work. I think most of us wish that we would put in X units of input, meaning the hard work that we're doing on a daily basis, and we would get the output would be in equal proportion. But unfortunately, that's just not the way that it works in this sport. I will say that over the long haul, and the long haul is a number that I can't really define for you right now. It might be a year, it might be 4 years, it might be 10 years. But if you do stick with smart training, consistent training that isn't about quick fixes, that you will see progression over the long haul. And here's why I can tell you that. I'm not as fast as I used to be. That is absolutely certain. I'm certain of that. But there's something that, because I have stuck with running for many years, I still have a base of fitness, and I still know that I can be competitive at a high level because I have been so consistent. And I'm not sure why I'm telling you this. I kind of lost my train of thought with that one. All right, let's move on to something more important, especially girls. Yes. If you were in Marie's little segment last night, she went into a lot of detail on this, and I will just re-emphasize. I wrote 1 to 2 plateau seasons on here, but in my experience, there are some girls who don't really have the plateau season. They continue to improve every year. I've had quite a couple of those in my experience. There are some girls who really struggle to improve even when they're putting in, and this is, the inputs are the same. You're coming to practice every day. You're putting in all the hard work. And it's a pretty dark, 2 years where they are just not seeing the improvements. In fact, they're seeing regressions from their performances in the past years. But for most girls, and I wish I had a percentage to give you, but a high percentage of girls, 1 to 2 out of their 8 seasons in high school running, they're either improving by half a second or 2 seconds in the 5K, or they're not improving at all. In fact, sometimes I see kids who I know are doing all the right things in practice, but their performances aren't matching the input. This is so normal, and there's a really good reason for it. And this, just to say too, this happens with boys and girls. There's a lot of unexplained reasons, but the explained reasons are puberty and growth. And what's happening for boys and girls, particularly girls, is that you are, as an undeveloped prepubescent human, you're driving like a pretty crappy, flimsy, little lightweight car. And you know how to drive the car's working for you now. But then during puberty, you're given this luxury vehicle, and it's a little bit larger, probably more sturdy in some ways, but it's brand new to you. And it takes a while to learn how to drive that car in a way that feels comfortable, in a way that you feel safe doing. This analogy is kind of weird. I'm kind of making it up on the spot. But your body really is the vehicle that your brain thinks it knows how to operate. But when you have to change vehicles, as many kids do during puberty, there's a large period of adjustment where things are just really uncomfortable. And a lot of times when your body's adjust, or when your mechanics are adjusting to a new body, you have some seasons where you're just not going to improve. But almost universally, if you stick with it, you will break through to the others, have a breakthrough race. Except that I mentioned breakthrough races are BS. Okay, so a breakthrough race is kind of when you've been kind of running the same time over and over again, and then all of a sudden you drop 7 seconds in the mile. You've been running the same time over and over, and then you have this race. And I used to call them breakthrough races, and I used to really celebrate these, and I still celebrate them. I mean, geez, like, you're running a big PR, like that's definitely worth making mention of. But it wasn't what you ate for breakfast that morning in most cases. It definitely wasn't the workouts you specifically did that week. It's the body of work that you did for weeks, months, and years leading up to that time. And that breakthrough race was just the time that your body, brain, the universe, it all came together, and you ran this big PR. It's easy to think that there's a quick fix to things, but I would say that almost universally these breakthrough races are the product of many years of hard work, and your body just cashing in on it at a certain time. I realize I'm almost out of time here, but I have to put this quote up because I love it. I haven't heard much that I can agree with more regarding training during COVID, and I apologize for the abbreviated profanity, but Des Linden is absolutely right here. Running does make us better at life, and we don't know when we're going to have races. We know we can run right now, even if we're not doing it together. And we know that racing will be back. And we have life to live right now. So I believe that every day you get out and train and give the right effort for the day, that's one day, one penny in the bank of becoming a better human being and being ready to come back when racing does return. And I just can't wait to see all of you guys there. I cannot wait for that first cross country meet that happens, or maybe it'll be the first track meet where I see some of you guys. I know I'm really looking forward. And here's my name and my email address. This is a photo. I promised Chuck I had already created this when you showed your version of the dueling teams with you guys and Maria Carrillo. But this is our girls team after taking second at the state meet last year with the first place team champions, our crosstown rivals, Lick Wilmerding. The community that running can build for us is something that no pandemic will take away. And these girls, although they are desperately hoping we have a state meet to avenge our runner-up finish last year, we've grown so much, not just from our own team, but from our rivals and from our competition. And I hope that that's something that you guys can remember throughout this time too. So thank you.
Thank you, Carin. That was fantastic. We really appreciate the time that you've given us this morning. I have a few questions from the audience. There's still time if people want to throw a question into the Q&A. But let me ask a question that that kind of came to mind for me, which was, what are the differences that you notice about developing unity on a boys squad versus how that develops on a girls team? Can you speak to that at all?
Sure. I've heard this said before, and I think it is true to some degree, that boys become closer as they do work together. And in this case, doing workouts, but specifically competing. A lot of times boys feel that connectedness after they've gone through a really harrowing practice session or come together as a team during a big meet. Girls, on the other hand, and I'll say this as a former girl athlete, we're actually like, and this is stereotyping for sure, but we're more inter-team. There's more inter-team competition if we don't already have some of the social and emotional bonds put in place. So something that is really important, I think, for coaches of girls teams and girls, if you guys are listening, is to figure out how to build time together that's not, hashing out a workout together, because sometimes that can actually feel too competitive and can destroy team unity. And to be honest, that's something that we're definitely still working on right now, but our captains are, we're really vocal about it. And I think the other thing is to make sure that in either case, whether it's a boys team or a girls team, that you're communicating honestly with your coach about what's going on. We had a couple of those issues last year, but we had some really good communication, and the girls, I think they're stronger and tighter now than ever, which will only help us in the competitive season.
Okay. Marie Markham is actually on listening. She has a question. What are some things your athletes do on their own to step up and motivate each other during these times?
Great question. When they're not together, these girls are they're logging. I don't really emphasize Strava too much because, to be honest, only about 20% of my kids have GPS watches. So I really believe in the Timex Ironman, and I know a lot of coaches don't, but that's me. What they do a lot is they communicate. They have text chat groups. We've done a few, we actually have, when we've done Zoom meetings, we've separated the boys team and the girls team, because I find it a bit overwhelming to have that many people in a Zoom room. So those sessions have been really good. And they have also, they're just friends, they communicate with each other, just individually outside of running. So I think we have a pretty tight group in that way.
All right. Another question. Paul Gaffney says, how do you force yourself to actually take recovery days and limit your effort in practice rather than going out and giving 110% each day?
Well, I think the biggest thing is knowing why you're doing the recovery day. You're not doing the recovery day to win it. And this was a trap I fell into in college for sure, because, I go from being a state champion to suddenly being on a team with, everybody's a state champion in college. And I would just push my recovery days because I just wanted to stay up with these people who were faster than me. But the purpose of a recovery day is to help your body adapt to the workout that you did the day before, and to prepare your body to have the best workout that you can have when that next harder effort comes around. So if you can think about it as like, what's important right now on the recovery day, the important thing is getting your body into a place where you can have a great next hard effort. And you're not going to have a great next hard effort or next race or whatever it is if you are, oh, sorry, thanks. You're not going to have a great next hard workout if you don't take your recovery days at a pace that feels easy or at least medium for you.
Okay. Here's a question. You clearly have a great rapport with your athletes, but how do you set the tone for those training sessions or those races where you really want to get to work, where you really want them to focus and take it seriously? I think good coaches tend to be able to make those shifts, right? To pivot from this is fun, we're goofing around, to, all right, it's time to get serious. Are there any things in particular that you do to kind of cue that up?
Sure. Well, at the beginning of each season, we pinpoint the races or the meets, the efforts that we want to be our focus efforts. In a normal cross country season, this would be typically one race at the end of September, one race at the in October, and then the 2 races in, well, we have to make it to the state meet, so we have to put in some effort at the section level, and then the state meet for sure. I think that if we give people really specific times well in advance, when we know those are your see God days, or those are your days when you want to be really going to the well with your racing effort, it's easy, and you're not emphasizing some of the other efforts as much. Kids are just going to naturally get there. But we talk about it. We have a lot of, we do visualizations. We hype up these big meets at practice long before anybody, sets foot on a starting line, so that people are thinking about it weeks and weeks in advance, and not wasting time. And on the flip side, not wasting time stressing over the fact that they only made it through 5 of the 6 800s during a, medium workout.
We'll do one more question. So you've been doing Zoom sessions with your teams?
Probably not as many as you, Chuck.
Well, so how often are you doing those team-wide Zoom sessions, and what are the goals that you have when you're meeting with your team in those environments? Because obviously, like you said, you only see 12 or 11 of your kids on a regular basis. So what kinds of goals do you have when you do have the opportunity to meet with the entire team?
I often go around and just ask people, sometimes we'll do like silly questions and, just some sort of like icebreaker things to get people talking, because in my opinion, screens are really awkward. I'm not probably looking in the right place right now because I still struggle with this whole thing. But the main point is just to see each other's faces without masks on, and talk about how we're doing. So it's often less formal. I do ask people about their training, because that's an easy entree into the conversation. That's what we're, the thing that brought us together in the first place. But we just talk, and a lot of times I don't even need to be there. The kids just it kind of devolves into their own conversation. And that's really the point of why I'm doing them, because it's less about any important information I need to convey. I mean, I can do that in an email, but it's more about kids being together in some capacity, like they were every day at practice during normal times.
All right. Well, thank you, Carin. This has been fantastic. We're going to bring Kevin into the spotlight here to wrap things up, but we've got one final treat here.
Yes, Carin, thank you again. Some great information out there. I really like the talk about the personality of the so-called distance runners, and the advice not to try to make up lost workouts. I think a lot of people become possessed with numbers that you have to hit a certain number in a certain time. And I don't know how many kids look at their watch, and you're supposed to do a 50-minute run, and they're back to school and 48 minutes, and you see them running around in circles for the next 2 minutes just so their watch can say 50. So that is our personality. But yeah, trying to make everything up if you miss something is not the best idea.